Right, okay, let's make a start. So, hello everybody, thank you for attending and welcome to the Welsh Azure User Group virtual meet on the 21st of January 2021. Well, needless to say, we've got another great packed agenda for you tonight. I'm going to try and skip through these few slides as quickly as possible because obviously we've got two great speakers lined up for you. We're going to kick off in a second with Christos, and he's going to take us through Azure Identity and specifically around what that means for developers. So really looking forward to that session from Christos there. Once Christos has been through that session, we're gonna move over to Graham. Graham's going to give us an update on where we are with Azure Synapse, and we're going to take a look at Purview, which is the new the data governance service. I think that was released by Microsoft just before Christmas. So, two great talks coming up, everybody. So obviously stick around. And to keep you enticed through the entire show, we've got the usual Kahoot quiz. So we're going to be kicking off with that Kahoot quiz, and we've upped the ante again this month with the prizes. Not only have we got the two £50 Amazon vouchers, so of course we'll give one to the first place winner on the Kahoot quiz. I think we'll give one away for at random. So stick around and leave that feedback. You'll get the link at the end of the session. So we'll pick a winner at random. Plus, we've got a couple of Microsoft exam vouchers as well to give away. So some great prizes there. So like I say, we aim to finish around about 8:30, give or take a few minutes. So hopefully you've all got your cups of tea and coffee or something stronger and a few snacks, and we'll get through all of this agenda. Okay, as usual, housekeeping rules. Be courteous to each other, please. There are no stupid or silly questions. So if you've got any question at all for our speakers, what we'll do is we'll ask you to put them in the chat. We've got some other guys from Microsoft and other technical sort of seasoned experts on the call. If they can't answer your chat, then we'll ask obviously Christos and Graham to review those at the end, and we'll call them out. So please put them in the chat channel for now. Stay on mute unless you're invited to speak, of course. You've all got control of your own mute button, so you just bear that in mind. And again, feel free to ask any questions as we go through the sessions. Like I say, the best thing is just enjoy the sessions. Try and get out as much as you can from both Christos and Graham now, because it's invaluable information they're going to give us tonight. As usual, we are the Welsh Azure User Group sort of organisers. So I forgot what I was saying then for a minute. I was staring at the screen, but right. So as usual, I'm John Lunn. I work for BT Enterprise. We got Richard Griffiths on the call. We've got to do this every week. We've got to get a little Brady Bunch thing up there and just go through a cycle of video, haven't we? Say hello, Griff, and wave. He's gone off.
Oh, hang on.
No, he's not on.
I'm there.
There he is. Hi,
Griff. Yes, joined by my dog.
We got a bull. I haven't seen a bull join up. Yeah, he is. There he is. Hi, a bull. You there? He's forgotten his mute button and his camera. Yeah, he has. We've got George. There's George. Hi, George.
Hi, everyone.
And then obviously supported. Thank the guys from Microsoft who support this user group extensively. We've got Anna.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon.
We got Matt.
Hi all.
And Ahmed. If Ahmed's there either. Can't see him pop up on the channel there. But anyway, the point of introducing us is as you can see, obviously this is a huge team effort. We pull these sessions together for your benefits, the community benefit, really. As always, we work as much as we can off the feedback that we get from these sessions. So it is invaluable to us. It helps us kind of set the scenes for the coming sessions, obviously, to invite people like Christos and Graham onto the course to basically speak about the knowledge that you guys want. So like I say, that feedback's important. And you can reach out to any one of us. Obviously, we're on Twitter, LinkedIn. Add us all, say hello, just anything that you've got to say, anything towards the group. Reach out to any one of us. Okay, quick message. I don't think we've got anybody on from Servant tonight. I haven't seen Des join. So I'll give a quick shout out to our sponsors. As always, we've got a couple of great sponsors that kind of support our user group and have done for the past few months now, and their support obviously is invaluable for kind of helping us get the group running, for giving spot prizes and things like that. So a big shout out to Servant. As you can see, Servant themselves, they sponsor a few of the UK-based Azure user groups. So give them a look, say hello to them, add them on LinkedIn, and thank them for obviously all their efforts. And the same absolutely goes to Admiral, with Admiral being a locally HQ-based Welsh organisation. Obviously, it's great to have those guys supporting the Azure user group for us. And again, those pair of sponsors that we got are invaluable to help us keep this group running and moving forward and giving you all of this kind of great stuff. So thanks to the sponsors. And before we kick off with this session tonight, obviously, I don't know if anybody's seen the latest announcement for February's meetup. Really excited about this. We've managed to secure not only John Saville, but also Scott Hanselman. So if you're relatively new to the tech world, all I would say, especially around Azure and Microsoft, is look those guys up, look at their YouTube channels, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, follow them. They're two great speakers, and we're obviously honoured to have those guys say yes and come and give us a session at our next meetup, which is in February. So obviously bookmark that date. We're going to be starting a little bit earlier, but for obviously reasons with the time zones. I know Christos has been great to join us today, so it's early morning over in the US. So we're starting that session a little bit earlier to kind of coincide with those guys' schedules. So RSVP, add it to your calendars, and we look forward to that one. And if that wasn't enough, we're going to move even further forward in time now and talk about the March and April sessions. I think tentatively the group, we've had a chat, you may have seen we put out a call for speakers, and really this is aimed at inviting all you guys. If you guys feel that you want to speak, you want a pedestal to say something about Azure or Azure related, this is your opportunity really. And I think what we're trying to do is cultivate those people that maybe you're new to speaking, maybe you're a little bit nervous, maybe you don't have some content that kind of fills 40-45 minutes. Lightning talk. So what we're looking for, and by the way, we've had some phenomenal feedback and phenomenal sessions submitted already. We're going to leave this open a little bit longer, but if you've got a talk 10-15 minutes on an Azure topic of your choice, drop onto that link and submit a session. Join up to Sessionize, submit it to us. I think we're going to review them over the next couple of weeks and get back to everybody. And obviously we're hoping to turn the March and April talks into those lightning sessions. So we should, in theory, get a good 7 or 8 sessions per meetup, which should be, fast paced, but very informative and very broad in the content area. So that's our next, as you can see, we're kind of pushing into Bay now. So yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but it's all great stuff. And on that note, I'm going to hand you over to Anna now, that's going to talk to you a little bit about the next couple of things that we've got.
Amazing. Thanks, John. That's great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. And thanks, John. That was an amazing kick-off for us this evening. So I just wanted to let everyone know I'm actually one of the Women in Tech ambassadors for Microsoft. So I wanted to share with you 2 amazing events that we're running for children and young adults. So the first one is DigiGirls. So if you've not come across this before, DigiGirls is an event that we're running next week. There's still time to sign up. And to give you a bit of background, the DigiGirls team within Microsoft, they essentially aim to help and inspire young girls and provide them with new opportunities to engage the exciting realm of STEM. So DigiGirls it's a Microsoft digital skills and technology education program. And it's really aimed at children in schools with opportunities to learn about careers in tech and connections with Microsoft employees. So this event is open to girls aged 10 to 14, and we're going to share the link in the chat channel. So if you've got any daughters or you have any relatives that are interested in technology or an opportunity to get involved with Microsoft, then absolutely sign up for DigiGirls. There's more information in the link that we've just shared. And then, John, if you can change on to the next slide, please. Amazing, thank you. I have to be honest, I only found out about this last week in Microsoft, but what you can see now is something called Mission Earth. So this is an education series in collaboration with Adobe. So Microsoft and Adobe have teamed up to launch this Mission Earth, which honestly, I looked at the content and thought, I wish I was a child again, because this looks amazing. It really is aiming to give young people the opportunity to research, build and create sustainable living spaces using Minecraft and Adobe Spark. So there's a variety of sessions over the period of a few weeks, and it combines STEM with creativity and storytelling. There's webinars that you can sign up for. And again, we're going to paste the link in the chat channel. So there's an amazing program that's been set up by us and Adobe. And the age range here is 8-year-olds to 14-year-olds, both male and female. So absolutely check out the links if you've got children or anyone you know would be interested. This is an amazing experience for them to get involved in, especially as we're sort of in these remote situations at the moment. So yeah, these two initiatives that we are promoting, absolutely get involved if you think it would be of interest to anyone you know. And then if we can flip on to the next slide, John, please, that would be great. Thank you. And then finally, I just wanted to finish off by, well, first of all, thanking everyone who got involved. We ran an open source dev-based challenge before Christmas. And I cannot believe I'm saying this, but we had over 80 people sign up for this challenge, which is absolutely amazing. So thank you all for getting involved and thank you for completing the challenge. There's just one problem. We cannot track down some of the winners. So we've got some amazing prizes that you can see on the screen. We've got a Surface Go and we've got the Bitbox that we need to get sent out to the winners. So there's a few winning names on the screen here that you'll be able to see. If you recognize any of these people, please, please, please contact me. My email address is at the bottom of this screen. It's anna.mcnally@Microsoft. If you recognize or you actually are any of these winners, I have prizes that I want to get out to you. So please contact me and I will get these, the exam vouchers or the prizes out to you ASAP. And then stay tuned for another challenge, which we'll hopefully be running this year. And we're looking for other opportunities to get everyone involved in another challenge. So yeah, thank you so much for getting involved. We absolutely loved this challenge and it was really good fun. So yeah, that's it from me this evening. Thanks, John, and looking forward to the two speakers this evening.
Thanks, Anna. That's brilliant. And that's all from our introduction piece. So on that note, I'd like to hand over to Christos now, who is going to take us through Introduction to Identity for Developers. Over to you, Christos.
Sounds good. Great intro, everyone. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I think it's afternoon for most of you, or happy time zone if you're not joining us from an afternoon zone, right? So today I am here to talk to you about Microsoft Identity. And if you never used it before, then it's going to be an introductory session. If you have questions about the stuff that we talked today, or you want more advanced stuff, then the good news is that I have more for you. So I work as a program manager for Microsoft Identity. I'm in the developer advocacy team, hence the reason why I'm reaching out to you and doing this session. But the hope is that after you walk out from this session, you'll have a good idea of how to create secure apps, either backed by Azure AD or B2C or the Microsoft Identity platform in general. So that's my mission. If you like what you see, if you want to see more, if you want to come build stuff with us, we have a bi-weekly or twice weekly stream that we do on Twitch. It's the 4 to 5 show, the Redmond show. We also stream on YouTube and other places, so you don't have to be on Twitch. But on Twitch, you can start and interacting with us. You can join us. It's every Monday and Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific, so that should be 4 p.m. UK time. So we try to make it as European friendly as possible. And this is where we build all the fun stuff with Identity, whether that's applications running on AWS and securing against Azure AD, whether that's creating Teams apps, whether it's using Azure, how can you do it securely? We'll show you these solutions end to end in most cases. Now, one of the questions I would ask if I were in the room would be, how many of you have developed or built your own identity solution? That'll be me. I've done it in the past, and it was awful because it's super complex and it's super challenging to build. So I don't want you to be one of the many companies here that made the news because the reason that user data were compromised. In fact, I don't know if you follow Troy Hunt, but he's got a website. He's a security expert down in Australia, and he's built this website called Have I Been Pwned, that allows you to go and put your email address, any email address that you've ever used on any website, and it will flag it up if it's ever been compromised. If your credentials have ever been compromised in one of these 417 websites, currently that number sits at 500, and we're nearly at 10.5 billion email addresses or accounts that have been compromised around the world. As you can see, various companies from pizzas to Adobe to Sony have at some point been the target of that attack. And we know that identity is not the most exciting subject. In fact, most of the developers do feel quite stressed when they're asked to build something around identity, managing users. So we don't want you to feel stressed. We don't want you to feel worried about that because we have a solution for you. The Microsoft Identity Platform, which consists of two main flavors, Azure AD, Azure Active Directory, and Azure Active Directory B2C, allows you to build the right solution for your customers or your users. We will mention or I will explain when to use what. But imagine this. You sit on your desk and your manager comes over and says, hey, Chris, I want you to build a website for our customers. And it needs to actually allow them to authenticate. We also want to use multi-factor authentication and just go and do it. Most people at this point are like, damn, man, I have no idea where to get started. I don't know what I'm doing. And the good news is that if you already use Azure, if you already use Microsoft 365, you already have an Azure AD tenant, which is great. But the one thing I want you to focus here is the number on the lower right-hand side. Active Directory does 30 billion authentications per day. That's an insane amount of numbers or authentications. That's a humongous number. It's so big, in fact, that I had to go and check with marketing to make sure that we didn't screw up an M for a B. So it's definitely billion. And the nice thing about that is that you as a developer never, ever, ever have to worry about how are you going to scale your identity solution. You don't have to worry about what happens if your application goes viral from one night to another and you wake up with 100,000 new users in your solution. It will scale for you. So as a developer, that's one of the problems you don't have to worry about, scalability in your identity system. Now, how do you get started? Like, you've been tasked to go and build the app. How do you get started? As I said, if you are already using Azure, if you're already using Azure or you have Microsoft 365, you already have an Azure AD tenant behind the scenes. Many people don't even realize, and many companies don't even know that they're using Azure AD behind the scenes. So that's the first item of the checklist. The next question that you're probably going to ask is, how quickly can I get things off the ground and how quickly can I add authentication? Today, we have, well, at least at this point or up until this point, we have been working very, very closely with our SDKs team to make that integration as simple as possible. So no matter what framework or language you use, we want to make it simple for you to integrate. That means that if you are building with .NET today, it takes one line of code, literally one line of code and 4 lines of configuration to set up authentication on your website. And I will show you that in the demo. I'm not lying. If you're building with JavaScript or Node or Java or other language like Python, then it might not be one line of code, but it's definitely not hundreds. It's probably in the region of 20 lines of code, which is still a lot less than if you had to build your own system. Does it support or integrate well with my language, ID, and platform? It does. It doesn't matter where you're running. It doesn't matter where you're planning to run your solution. It doesn't matter where you're building. Whether you're using Rider for .NET or PyCharm or what have you, we're adding integrations for Azure AD as we speak to allow you to quickly right-click add authentication, or I want to create a new website that has authentication, and the tools will allow you to do so. But even if you're not using any of our tools, you'll still be able to do this either by script or in the portal. And finally, does it support advanced features? Now, I did mention before multi-factor authentication. If you ever had to deploy or implement 2-factor authentication, you'll know that it takes quite a few moving parts to make it work. You need an email service. You need a texting service. You probably need to integrate with something like an authenticator app. So to do all these, it requires a lot of coding, a lot of thinking to get it right. Like, what happens if somebody tries to brute force attack my login? What happens if somebody intercepts an email with a password reset? How do I verify that the person that is authenticating is the right one? What happens with proof of possession of existing tokens or what have you? So all these features that you have to start thinking as you are looking at implementing your solution are taken care for you by the platform. And this is what Azure AD does for you. It reduces sign-in friction. So from a user perspective, I have a consistent experience on signing into a line of business app, or a more customized experience if I'm using B2C. From an organizational data perspective, once somebody makes it through the gate, then the whole world opens to them. Especially for organizational data, you get everything you need from Graph. So you can, look at your team's status. You can get access to calendar and Outlook and all the data, the dynamic CRM, Power BI, everything is accessible to you. So as a developer, you can build some fantastic experiences for your users. Complying with IT, that's a big challenge. What do I mean by that? Let's imagine that you build a website that has its own user database, and some of your users have left the company. I've been in scenarios where people had left the company for 2 years were still able to access production systems because their accounts were never removed from that database, or that company never rolled keys, or what have you. And that is a very dangerous scenario. So we want you to write solutions that automatically comply with IT. If IT says we need to add conditional access that only people from the UK or Europe can access our system, implementing that in code is insanely hard. Implementing that in Azure AD is insanely simple by adding a conditional access policy. If you want to enforce that everyone has a multi-factor authentication login, then again, that's something that IT can push down. You as a developer don't have to change the code or do anything else. Did you see where I'm going? You as a developer have very few things to do or worry about when you integrate with our platform. And finally, safeguarding access. Can you verify that the current user only has access to his data, or the fact that me as a user can only provide access to the data I want them to access? So it goes bi-directionally. Me as a developer, or I as a developer, can only provide you access to your data, or I will make sure that you only have access to your data, while you as a user can consent to the app to only have access to the data that you want. So if you don't want to give access to the calendar, then you can say, well, you know what, I don't like this permission. I'm not going to consent to the app having access to all my contacts and all my emails, while I only want to use this app to, I don't know, sign into the line of business app and maybe grab some information from SharePoint, right? Why do you want access to all these things? So it's nice that this trust is enforced via our libraries. How do you get started? Right, I convinced you that you can start using Azure AD today because it's a fantastic place. Now, how do you get started? What are the components? I have no idea where to get started. Well, there are two different bits when it comes to authenticating users to Azure AD or B2C. The first component is the app registration. This is you or your admin going into the Azure Active Directory portal and saying, well, I need to sign up some users via web app or a console app or something else. You're showing your intent to Azure AD, and you say, I'm going to be using you as the identity provider. So I'm creating my app registration. If you've ever dealt with Facebook or GitHub or Google authentication, you probably had the same experience. You had to go and register an app, and that app is more or less a description of what you're going to be using the identity provider for. And you can do that either via the portal if you want to right-click and you're a graphical user person, or you can script that. So if you are planning on doing it via CI/CD, that's all scriptable for you. Next, that's the Azure AD part done. So you're done. You got everything you need. So now you need to go back into your code and implement the authentication component. If you are very new to Azure AD, then we give you fantastic libraries out of the box. So we have MSAL that is becoming available to more and more and more languages. And if you want to see it in more languages, please give us your feedback. But the fact that you can download the library and go to the samples very quickly and see what you need to do to add the authentication means that you have a starting point. However, you might say, well, I have a solution that has already been running for 4 years using OpenID Connect. I don't want to strip all that out and get your libraries. So how about using your own libraries? Bring your own libraries, as we say, as long as they're OpenID Connect certified. And I know that this name probably sounds weird to you, like OpenID Connect. It is a standard, right? And even though I don't like to talk about protocols and standards, just the fact that you know that OpenID Connect compliance is all you need to use any library means that you can bring your own and be happy with it. So you don't have to strip out code. We let you come as you are. Now, the next one is deciding which identities you want to authenticate. And probably that's the decision you take before you do the app registration, but I will ignore that for now. Maybe I need to change the order on the slide. You let me know. But supported identities means that you have to make a decision about what kind of users are going to be using your app. If you are authenticating line of business apps, if you're authenticating people at Microsoft or at Contoso or at your own company, then they are organizational users. And this is where Azure AD comes, right? You already have these users in Azure AD. They're using it for Office or something else. You can automatically pull them into your solution. However, if you want to bring external users, let's say you're building the next Walmart, you're building the next amazing mobile app, and you want users to come in, create a profile, and maybe buy your products. And then this is where Azure Active Directory B2C or business to consumer, business to customer, whatever you want to call it, comes in. So with business to consumer or B2C, you start with a very basic username and password or telephone and password. It allows you to create users at that base level. So it's a user name and password database. However, we do give you the ability to add social media accounts. That means that customers may not want to create a brand new account. They might want to just bring their Facebook sign in, and we allow you to integrate with that. So users will sign in with Facebook, that will create an account inside B2C, and then they authenticate to the app, and you're done. So external, internal, you make the right choice for your app, and off you go. And since I already said that we're built on top of industrial standards, like OAuth 2 for acquiring and managing tokens, and OpenID Connect for acquiring tokens for your identity ID tokens or explaining who you are, you're good to go. Any library will work as long as they have been built around the standards, and we're not really creating our own solution or our own identity standards. We are standard compliant, and that's very important. And with that, I think I've spoken enough, and it's time to go and do a demo. Now, this demo is going to actually use JavaScript. And since I'm not a fantastic JavaScript developer and I don't know what I'm doing, we're going to let Azure AD guide us through the experience. So let me open my Azure AD portal. If I find which one I need to use. Okay, it should be here. Yes, too many windows. So right now I'm signed in into my Azure AD portal. But it has not refreshed yet. Guys, let me see. Oh, there you go. Okay. So I'm inside my Azure AD portal. This is a custom domain or a custom Azure AD. If you work for a company, you probably have an organizational Azure AD. Sometimes developers are very restricted on what they can do. For example, on the Microsoft tenant, I can't go and create random stuff, and I can't get full access to all the data or the permissions I need, because obviously we have nearly 150,000 employees, and we don't want to give to everyone access to everything. So if you want to play with advanced scenarios, you can go and create a brand new developer tenant called whatever you want through the Microsoft 365 developer program. It's an everlasting free Azure AD they can go and play with. The only caveat there is that it's not associated with an Azure subscription. So if you want to use that for Azure things like, say, authenticate users and then pull Azure storage, then you cannot do that. Just so you're aware. So if you have an MSDN license, for example, then you could use that to have your own MSDN tenant and Azure to play around. But if you just want to play with Azure AD and sample data behind things like OneDrive, Calendar, and what have you, then the Microsoft 365 developer program is a fantastic way to get started. So in this instance, I have my test tenant, and I'm going to create a brand new app registration. Remember, we talked about app registrations. This is where I'm going to come and show the intent of using Azure AD for authentication. So we'll do a brand new registration. We'll call it Welsh demo. Will allow only accounts from my organization. It can be multi-tenant as well if you want to later on. And then I'm going to do register, right? 3 clicks so far, nothing else. And since I said I'm not a very good JavaScript developer and I don't know what I'm doing, let's let Azure AD handle that for me. okay, we want to create a single page application with JavaScript, and we're going to use JavaScript auth code flow, which is the latest and safest way to do it. So as you can see here, it says, well, the first thing you need is obviously an Azure AD. You need to have Node on your local machine, and you need Visual Studio Code or something similar to allow you to play with the sample. Now, we need to make some configuration changes. Yes, please do them for me. And the only change that we're doing here is saying, when you successfully authenticate users, where do you want me to redirect them after the authentication? And that's my local host 3000 for now. I can have multiple URIs if I want to. And that's all we had to do. Now I can go and download the sample and play around. So let's open this one. I'll grab it and put it in the right directory. And then I will open it in VS Code so everybody can see the project. I will walk you through the experience. And from there, we can go into some more demos. Are there any questions so far while I am sticking stuff into my directory? Feel free to come out of mute or use the chat. They're both fine. No questions so far. Okay, cool. Let's go to our terminal, which is here. Let's do CD projects. And the project I just downloaded is the MS Identity JavaScript v2. So let's change directory to that. MS. Okay, and let's open this in code. And by code, I mean VS Code. Fairly standard stuff. We have server.js, which in effect serves the pages that we need, and all the magic is happening inside the app. Now we have an index HTML. It's just a standard HTML page that pulls a couple of files in. These files are auth-config and UI.js. The UI.js is the one that responds to auth changes. So when I'm logged in, it shows something, and then when I'm not logged in, it shows a different UI to the user, a different experience. But let's look at the authentication code. How much does it take to configure authentication? At the very minimum, you need a config with the client ID, which corresponds to the application ID that we just created inside the portal. In fact, 47B, and if we go back into the portal, we should see that in the overview, it matches once it loads. Come on, you can do it. Just a day for Azure, I guess, or me. Okay, 47B, that matches, perfect. Then the next thing is the authority, and this one is saying which Azure AD tenant do you want me to use to authenticate, because you could have multiple tenants. In this instance, we say we want to use the B55, and you can find that matching here. Let me just open the page. That's the B55. That's our directory or tenant ID. That's all you need. And the redirect URI, remember, that's what the quick startup configured for us, the localhost 3000. And then there are two different ways to authenticate in JavaScript. One is with a pop-up, and then the other one is with a redirect. So the user gets redirected to another page and they come back. And I don't like that experience. And I think the default one is the pop-up. So what is in the pop-up file? You can see. How much does it take to sign in? Well, it takes 2 lines of code. And then from the sign out, it also takes 2 lines of code. We have a little bit of code here to go and grab tokens from Graph if we want to call into Graph, and we'll do that in a second. But for now, you'll see that everything else is more or less UI changes. So once I sign in, it will handle the response and say, well, you've signed in. Let me put your name on the screen. Actually, let's see this application running, because I think that's more useful. What do you guys say? Let's clear this one, and then let's do npm install. It will install all the libraries that we need. So that will take a while. Well, not too long, not too many libraries. And then we need to do npm start. This will actually start the application. And it's already listening on port 3000. So let's go and test it. Now, do I remember my sign-in? That's the other question. That's our page. That's a base vanilla JavaScript app that allows us to sign in. So there's the lovely pop-up here. And since I've already authenticated to my test tenant, I can use that one. It might ask me for permissions, which is great. Now, this one is, remember how we talked about consent? Which data can I see and which data does the developer want me to see? And here it says, well, I'm going to sign you in, so I need to be able to read your profile, your username, and I also need to give you access to OpenID. So I'm not going to consent on behalf of the organization, but admins can do that once and for all for everyone. And lo and behold, I have my information here. Now, since I've already pulled my profile and my token has that information, I can see it here as well. Location null. I am nowhere. Citizen of nothing. Right. Now, JavaScript also allows you to have incremental consent. So up until this point, I haven't given it any access other than just my profile. But let's see if I wanted to read my emails. Well, the app says now, well, do you want me to read your emails? Do you consent to that? I will say yes, of course. By the way, if you try to do that with a Microsoft tenant, it will say, nope, you can't show your emails from work to everyone on the stream, but fine. So this one is saying, I'm going to be reading your profile, but I'm also going to read your email. That's what it asks here. And I will say, of course, why not? I've got nothing to hide. And within a few seconds, we see the email scanning. There were literally probably about 30 lines of code that do all that for you. Now, if I were to call something like Azure, using the Azure SDKs or calling into storage or whatever, then I could also acquire a token from Azure AD and say, pass that token into the call, and then I want to do that call to Azure Storage authenticated. So it's all secure end-to-end. Very similar experience. That's all it takes. I have another demo. Do you want to see a Blazor demo or do you want to see a standard ASP.NET demo? Raise your hands or somebody speak and I will comply accordingly. Blazor would be great, says John. Okay, John. I say Blazor, everybody says Blazor. Okay. Go on.
Can I ask a quick question?
Go for it.
So if we've got a public facing website and we want to add the demo as just shown,
yes,
is there a cost per user? So if I've got 100,000 visitors and they all want to authenticate?
Well, for B2C, if they are external users to your organization, then the first 50,000 monthly active users are all free. And then there is a scaling tier of cost after the 50,000 monthly active users. That is probably the cheapest in the market out there. So you can have up to millions of users. It will scale for you, and then you pay accordingly. It's a few pennies, I think, after the 50,000 to the first 100. And then it exponentially grows depending on the usage and what have you. You also have to pay extra for things like multi-factor authentication and conditional access in certain scenarios. But the fact that you have 50,000 users for free to begin with, it's a great number to begin with. And also it's a great problem to have. Once you hit 50,000, I think you can afford to pay a few extra pennies for authentication, especially if it's all taken care for you remotely, right?
Thank you.
Does that make sense? Cool. Azure AD is free for all your internal users. Where you have to pay more or have to go into premium, it's 50,000 users, not authentications. So you could have, because Dave is asking, is it 50,000 users? It's 50,000 monthly active users, which means that you get, they could be doing 1 million sign-ins and you still don't pay extra for that. It's unique users. So what was I saying? Yeah, Azure AD is free. Premium features are part of a different tier. So this is where you have to start paying as a company. But simple sign-in, sign-out is great. Yeah, I mean, it is great for 50,000 sign-ins for B2C. Most people don't even realize that. Okay, so people have spoken and they said we want Blazor. And this sample here is going to use Blazor WASM, so we're using the client side of things, and then we have an API in the back that pushes some data. So not only do we show the sign-in experience, but we're also showing the acquiring a token to go and securely speak to our API and pull the data across. So let's run them. right now, my terminal is in the API. So let's do the .NET run. And you probably see that I was testing my demo before we started just to make sure that everything was working. And here, that's my Blazor app. It's the vanilla Blazor template that you get out of the box. So let's do .NET run again. Let's make sure that our API started. It's listening at port 8080, and our Blazor app is running, listening at port 5001. So let's navigate to that. Let's use this page over here. Okay, so that's a box standard Blazor app with a login at the top. Let's click on that. Let's see what happens. Again, I'm using my test tenant, and because I've already signed in, it's like, I don't need you to do anything. Just I'll sign you in, and you can see my name up here. Now I need to go and fetch some data from my API. There you go. Let's click on that, and lo and behold, in a couple of seconds, we should see the data. The standard weather data that come with the weather API when you do file new project. Let me just stop this one and show you what the code looks like, because I think that's what most people want to see. Okay, so we have two projects. One is the API and the other one is the Blazor web app. Why is this green? What happened here? I'll close this one down, make this bigger. So inside, not now. Inside our API, we have the app settings. This is in fact, I can also do B2C or Azure AD. I have both configurations here. There's one library called Microsoft Identity.web. It's an API, so we don't need the UI. So there you have it. That's just the one library, the brand new library that we introduced in September. And in the startup, we have some configuration. Well, Chris, you did say it was going to be a one line. Well, it's a little bit more than that because we are using B2C here, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so this one is binding to B2C. And at the time I wrote this sample, it required a little bit of jiggery pokery because not everything was working out of the box. Trust me, the experience now for APIs is just a one-liner. However, if I were to use Azure AD, then this is the line I have up here. So standard Azure AD requires a one line of code. B2C requires a little bit more. Now inside my controller, which is where I'm serving the data, there's an additional check I'm doing, which is does my user have the right permissions? And this one is down here. Again, with one line of code, I can verify that the token that comes in has the right scopes to be able to speak to my API. So it's not just a case of presenting a token that shows I have authenticated, but it also checks that I have the right permissions to speak to that API. So win-win. And all these things I explained right now in 3 lines of code and a little bit of config. How does that sound? Okay, so we've done the Blazor. Let's jump quickly to Graph Explorer, because I think we're almost running out of time for my end anyway, or I think I have 15 more minutes. So let's do Graph. How many of you here have used Graph before? Graph Explorer. It's okay if you haven't used it. It's absolutely fine. I didn't know about Graph either. I thought it was GraphQL before I joined the team. I was like, why is GraphQL so big, and why is it related to Azure Microsoft Identity? Well, there you have it. It's Graph Explorer, or Graph in general, MS Graph, allows you to bring data from the organization to your users. You can consume them in console apps, you can automate tasks, you can create new app registrations, everything that you can do inside your tenant, inside your environment, can programmatically also be set via the Microsoft Graph. So if you want to upload a file into OneDrive, you don't have to drag the file yourself in there. You can have somebody uploading the file to storage and then using Graph to go and grab that file and put it in SharePoint and then send an email to you. But the best way to explain Graph is something that you use every single day. I suspect that most of you here have Outlook. So when you go to write a new email in Outlook, you have to find where to send it. Back in the good old days, you have to open the gal or the other's book and search for that name. Today, Outlook is trying to be a little bit more clever. Rather than casting stuff behind the scenes, it does a graph call to say, hey, Chris, I know that you usually work with these 10 people. Would you like me to put them at the top? And then, you don't have to search for them. In fact, I'll be so much clever that I will say the top person that you collaborate with is probably the one that you're sending an email to right now. So let me choose it for you. So in my Outlook, am I allowed to open my Outlook? Let's see. Do I have anything secret? I don't have anything secret. There you go. Here. So let's say new message. And if I come here, you'll notice that these are the people I have been working most in the last few days. Hannah, Todd, and JP. Where is that information coming from? So let's go aks.ms, ak.ms, GE for Graph Explorer. It's the best way to start looking at what Graph can do for you without having to write a single line of code. Let's make it bigger for everyone to see, right? So I did talk about people. There is a people API down here. And then here's people I work with. Now, obviously, I'm not signed in with my Microsoft tenant. You don't need to be signed into anything. In fact, we'll present you with sample data if you're not authenticated. But if you are authenticated, then it pulls the data from your directory. And you can see here, it shows me the people I work with, all the company and some random stuff. However, it doesn't stop there. It will probably also give me my code as well. So let's say I like it. I know what I want to do. Now, what does the code look like? We'll give it to you for C#, JavaScript, Java, and Objective-C. I mean, I don't know who does Objective-C these days, and look at the amount of code, but we even give you that. And that's a great starting point. You come up here, you say me, messages here. It will try to find them. It actually found them, and there you are. Like anything you can do. It also supports OData annotation, which means that you can filter, select, or sub-select properties within your data. You don't have to bring all the data down. And that functionality is also available in your code snippet. So if you say I want to just select the header for my emails, it's going to work. And when you use Graph, the sky's the limit. Scott Hanselman, which I think is coming to your user group soon, demoed something at Build this year where he would change the lights in his room based on his presence on Teams using Graph and Azure Functions. So Azure Functions would go and respond to changes in status, and that would also speak to his home lights to change the color. So if kids were trying to come in and they saw red or whatever other color he wanted to do, they would know that he was busy. But if it was green, they could come in. You can see that there are a lot of things that you can build around organizational data using Graph. So it's a great starting point. And with that, I'm probably gonna stop here unless you want me to do some more demos and show you ASP.NET or something else. But this is a great starting point. Now, I'm gonna show you a custom B2C signing. So what I'm going to do here, because B2C allows you to customize things. In fact, we just got off a call with somebody from the UK that's building an app for a customer, and they didn't want the customer to feel like they were coming out of the app to go and sign in, because that's what a delegated authentication does for you, and then come back again. I was like, that feeling is a little bit jerky and doesn't look nice. So can I configure my app to look and feel like exactly what the rest of the app looks like? So if I log out here, just thinking about it, did I stop the running process? I think I have. Yes, that's why it's not even working. So .NET run. Oh yeah, of course, it doesn't know what to run. Let's do the Blazor.NET run. I'm going back to my Blazor app and I'm kickstarting it again because I want to be able to show you my logout, which is probably not going to work. Okay, we're logged out. So if I press login, see, that definitely doesn't look like the standard B2C. In fact, it's a fully customizable Contoso High login page that I can also sign in with my Twitter account. Will that work? Let's, yeah, I haven't wired it up for this one. So let's close this one and log in again. But I can provide my credentials here. I have quite a few of them, so I can't always remember which one is wired up. You can see you can have fully customizable experience for Google. You can put icons if you want there to help guide the experience, and hopefully that will work. I also have two-factor authentication. We just didn't kick off right now because I've signed in, so he knows about it. But you can fully customize your pages as well. So when you're using B2C, it looks and feels like your app, and users have that kind of a consistent experience end to end. So even though you are going somewhere else to sign in, it does look the same. If I were going to use, you might say, well, Chris, this one popped up, it looked weird. If I were going to use this customization for this specific solution, I'll probably use the redirect URI, where I would go to another page that looks very similar to this layout. And then when the users signed in and went to whatever page we landed them, it will look and feel like I was always inside the application. So I never left. And there you have it. It takes a few lines of code. We have samples for most of the languages out there. We're building our library repository as we speak for the docs. So we have an improved experience there for you to select the right ones. We support most of the major frameworks. And if you want to see something that we haven't really built yet, then we're always welcome to get some feedback, or you're always welcome to leave feedback. And oh yeah, there was one slide I always like to show, which I probably skip, but we do encourage you to come as you are. And we also work with non-Microsoft technologies, third-party solutions, IDs, platforms, clouds. They're all fair game. You know, if you need to have a solution that it's stored in Bitbucket, and then you need to set up your CI/CD to work with AWS, but you need to secure that solution while it's running in Kubernetes in AWS, then yes, we can support you in that endeavor, and we can scale with you, and we can go wherever you are, as long as it's publicly accessible over the web. So even on-prem, you can build apps today that run on the desktop that authenticate against Azure AD instead of your local Active Directory. And there are lots of benefits in doing that, especially since COVID came to be, and we saw a massive exodus of people not working from the office anymore and had to be able to access internal apps. People that had already adopted that experience were able to very, very quickly steer the boat to fully remote and fully supported without having to use VPNs and what have you. Now, if you are running your solution in our platform, there are significant benefits that you get out of the box that most people are not aware. And I could do probably 2 or 3 more hours of all the nice benefits, but I will just very, very quickly touch upon managed identities and service principles that allow you to have secretless solutions that run end-to-end from development to production, no matter where you're running, from Power Apps to super advanced secretless solutions with Azure Functions to your, all web forms apps running on Azure Web Apps, and pulling data from the Microsoft 365 platform or Azure services. Again, all secured end-to-end with managed identities and service principles. So there you have it. That's me at my 45 minutes, and a few minutes for questions if you have any.
Christos, that was fantastic. I think you did a really good job. I think you've answered all the questions as we went. Last call. Any other questions for anybody before we say hello to Graham? No. So I guess, Christos, if anybody does have any questions, obviously after the maybe watching the record of this, are they okay to reach out to you on Twitter, things like that, I presume?
Yeah, let me take a second to add all the contact information you may use to reach out to us. We do have a dedicated email for developers. We do have Twitter and tweets and what have you. So feel free to reach out to any of these. I put it in the chat, so hopefully everyone can see it. If you can also put somewhere else that everyone can see it as well. Both me and JP are fully open. We also have a Discord which is very similar to Teams, but open to anyone. Feel free to join us there. There's active conversation about how do I build stuff. I'm stuck somewhere. How can I get unstuck? And if we can help you, there's a fantastic support team behind us that looks after developers in their Microsoft Identity endeavors. So I appreciate your time today. I know it's there are a lot of meetings throughout the day, so thanks for coming, and feel free to reach out, and I appreciate the invite.
No, thank you very much, Christos. I don't know if anybody wants to come off mute and give Christos a round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate that, Christos. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a nice evening. Stay safe. Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you, Christos. Speak soon. Okay, on that note, we shall just plow straight along and welcome Graham Martin to the user group. Hi, Graham. How are you doing?
Hey, John. How are you? Let me share my screen here.
Good, good.
You see that?
Yep, got you loud and clear. Over to you. Thanks, Graham.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you. So hopefully you see my screen, and yes, you are seeing a few slides, only a few slides, and then hopefully I'll break into the demo. So I wanted to cover, and again, this is going to be a bit of a whistle-stop tour because these are very broad topics in themselves, which particularly Synapse, which I'll get into. So I'm going to try to cover high level of both, and there are quite recent announcements in these areas. And as I said, I'd also ideally like to show you the UI because I think there's a lot of certainly a lot of interest in the market. There's a lot of differentiation, and these are huge. Both of these products have a lot of investment from the product teams, from corporation, from the leadership teams. So I think they're definitely worth investigating and maybe doing some exploration with, doing some discovery. So first up, I think I'll just get into Synapse, and I think Synapse is an interesting one. It sometimes takes a bit of explaining because it's actually many things. Previously, prior to the announcement of Synapse, it was just SQL DW, and I'll kind of come on to where SQL DW is and where it relates to Synapse. But first, I just want to sort of baseline, let's say, some of the pillars of the life cycle of data. So we have ingestion, we store the data, we do some transformation maybe, and we serve it out. And obviously simplifying things, but just trying to get across kind of the main pillars where we do as I said, there's disciplines applied to the data. And just what we often, by the way, Azure being Azure, the beauty of the cloud is we have lots of different ways of doing things. Yes, I know, maybe sometimes too many, but these, if you like, different capabilities and features and functionalities, they're driven by different requirements because not every customer is the same. Everyone's got different requirements, real-time, batch, different industries, different volumes, etc. So what I've done here is just picked a few options you have in each of those pillars. As I said, there are many more. And again, the beauty in Azure, you can light up the ones you need and probably, let's say, down select to a few patterns. You probably don't want hundreds of patterns in your organization, just a few. And some of those, if you like, the highlighted solutions I have there. What we hear is that for a lot of customers, this has proven quite arduous to try to get all of these services working or to build patterns. So what we kept hearing was, wouldn't it be good if there was more of a holistic solution to do a lot of, to, if you like, apply these multiple different disciplines, be it ingestion, storage, serving, etc. If it could all be done in one solution, one service, and that Q Synapse. So basically, Synapse is, as I said, it was built upon our SQL DW, our, if you like, MPP database in the cloud, SQL DW as was. We rebranded it into Synapse, Azure Synapse Analytics, I should say. And it's really quite a broader solution. It covers many more things other than just a, let's say, cloud MPP data warehouse, which I'll come on to. But in essence, that's what I'm trying to get across. It is, like I said, many different disciplines across the life cycle of your data. There's different personas who are going to use it. It's not just for data engineers. It's for data scientists. It's for data wranglers, discovery, Power BI users, architects, governance. So it spans lots of different personas. So that's why I think it's quite an interesting technology. And also equally why I think sometimes it takes a bit of explaining. And of course, it's built upon, the standard Azure security, DevOps, all those, ORBAC, etc., AAD, all of the things you'd expect, all the foundation services, it's probably built upon those as well. It kind of just to make sure that's called out. So again, so just to sort of break it down a little more, because as I said, some people have been a bit confused as to SQL DW and Synapse and what's what, where are the boundaries here. So let me just explain in a bit of a animation here. So, and as I said, think of what you're going to see here is actually all you get within Synapse, within the solution. So to think of the ingestion data factory, now data factory is a standalone solution and service within Azure, as it will continue to be. It's just you get basically data factory, or as it's called inside Synapse, integrate. This capability is now inside Synapse as well. So again, all of the things that, if you're familiar with data factory, you build data pipeline, you schedule, you orchestrate. It can be metadata driven through parameters, etc. You can monitor it, CI/CD as well. It can be, configured with your GitHub repository, etc. So that's data factory, and nothing changes there, other than you can now basically run pipelines, build pipelines, automate within the Synapse experience. So then if we talk about the storage layer, and again, classic cloud architectures here, you can decouple the compute from the storage, which makes a lot of sense, gives you flexibility, different scaling factors as well. But what we see in more and more is we see customers having many data lakes, many storage accounts, and that's quite common. Obviously, many databases as well. And again, even within those data stores, we expect to see lots of different file formats. Yes, things like Parquet, for example, are becoming more standard, and we're also, for example, the common data model is something we're pushing to sort of help, let's say, data exchange across different organizations within an organization, across different organizations, to share basically similar metadata. Delta Lake as well has got a lot of, I would say, a lot of uptake. A lot of a lot of customers are deploying that as well. But regardless of what and you probably see there's some unstructured in there as well. But I guess regardless of which you perhaps have standardized on, we expect to see a mix of everything, right? You're not just going to be CSVs or Parquet. You'll have lots of different file formats. And as I said, in different hierarchies in the lake or different storage accounts. And again, the reason I think we call this out is because you need flexibility. If you have different, let's say, storage formats, file formats in different locations, you need to have flexibility to get access to that, to do discovery, to do some hypothesis testing, to build ultimately to maybe curate, cleanse, transform, curate, and maybe build dashboards or populate a cube. So with that, we have a number of options. So the first option is you can do what you classically have always done, which is do ELT or ETL and take your, let's say, your data on your lake or your, let's say, landing area or staging area, and then you might apply some transformations and load it into a database, for example, what we now call Synapse, but maybe SQL DW of old. But you have another option that's called external tables. So what that is about is you basically register, think of it as a metadata stub inside of the database, and using something called Polybase, we can actually pull in the files on the data lake or on blob on demand. So what you're in effect doing is you're surfacing up what looks like tabular information, a standard schema, rows and columns that you can surface to Excel or Power BI, etc. But it's abstracted. You're abstracting away the fact that underneath that tabular information, what looks and talks like a table is actually behind the scenes, perhaps a CSV file on the data lake. So again, that's quite powerful, and we have a lot of patterns where that's deployed. And as I said, it's quite powerful to surface that to Power BI users. And that is basically, that capability is SQL DW as was. It's been GA since 2016, we're coming on 5 years, which in the cloud is like 50 years on-prem. So that's kind of what we've had prior to, we went GA with Synapse last December. So that is, as I said, the kind of core capabilities. But what we've done since is we brought on along Synapse. So what Synapse has brought to the table is it's brought along these on-demand, or we now phrase it serverless type capabilities. And by the way, I should call the SQL DW, we call that dedicated, but we're all kind of still catching up on the parlance here. The SQL DW is a dedicated pool, and what that means is you provision an amount of resource. They're called DWUs. So you provision that. It's basically that amount of size. You get a predictable bill because, as I said, it's a provisioned amount of resource. You can scale up, you can scale down, you can pause it, by the way, which a lot of customers do because, you know, a data warehouse is oftentimes not used overnight, etc. So that is, as I said, that is the classic, and you know, we call it dedicated pool. But you have these, I have it in here on demand, we now phrase it serverless, but basically you have these engines which can basically do work. Again, you may, for example, assign different Spark on demand or serverless clusters to certain user communities, to certain lines of businesses, and equally the SQL on demand engine. But the idea is that this gives you a lot more flexibility, because whereas in SQL DW, or you know, the dedicated pool, whereas you're actually, think of it as you're curating data, you're putting it through a transformation pipeline to basically land it inside the database, and there it is, a table in the database. But that may be overkill for certain, you know, certain data sets in your lake, because you probably don't want to curate all of your data. And think of, you know, if you're thinking about telemetry or IoT data or very low-level transactions that maybe don't require to be, if you like, loaded into, maybe they are at an aggregated level, but they probably, not every atomic detail needs to be loaded into your, you know, premium service, the dedicated pool there. So what you could do is maybe have your data scientists, have your data wranglers, have access to the data lake, the raw data, using these on-demand engines or these serverless engines. So again, it makes for more flexibility. You can have different personas, maybe data scientists, maybe data wranglers, discovery, business analysts, etc. They can get access and they can get perhaps value quicker, because as I said, you're kind of crunching the kind of lead time to value by sort of, as I said, missing out that sort of curation layer. Now, there's always going to be a degree of curation, because ultimately, and I'll just forward on here, you're probably going to have users demanding self-service BI, demanding operational reports, scorecards, dashboards. And again, we're obviously with Power BI embracing that world in real time as well. So there's always going to be a curation element where you need to populate sales data, for example, is a classic, you know, customer data, etc. But equally, there's probably, as I said, those different users who may have, as I said, may not be, let's say, less prescriptive, want to have to do a bit more discovery. And that's where those other engines and that sort of more, let's say, wider capability is perhaps a better pattern. And of course, all of this sits on top of, as I said, all of the foundational services you would expect. There's things like a shared metadata. So those engines can share metadata, quite powerful. All of the encryption, rollout of security, etc., things like that are obviously baked in, and Purview as well, which I'll come on to. But again, I just want to, this is kind of one way of trying to explain the fact that that little box, that SQL DW box, you know, that is, as I said, what you had in SQL DW, but Synapse is bringing on the much wider capability to serve, as I said, these different users. And I'll come on to the UX shortly, where you can hopefully get a feel for the fact that it's kind of designed for multiple personas, not just one sort of SQL type user. So this is just a very quick walk through then, just hitting a few of the points I've mentioned already. Synapse, when you deploy Synapse, you need to couple it with a data lake, Gen 2 data lake, that is. That is just a metadata. There's some metadata, there's a workspace it comes with, the analytics, Synapse Analytics Studio. So that workspace, it's just a folder, if I'm honest, but it's required. So you have as I said, you need to provide a data lake. And what you can actually then do as well is, and we'll come on to it, you can basically link it to all of the storage accounts in your organization. So basically, you then have access to potentially the whole universe of data in your organization. Again, we have management plane, security, monitoring. The data integration here is really basically data factory. And as I said, we have these runtimes, SQL, the dedicated pool, the serverless pool, and the Spark. It is Apache Spark, I should add. That is what we're using. It's not Databricks. That we have obviously Databricks, and you know, Databricks is its own service. You can add libraries to it, and again, most customers would you know, import libraries. So it's not just let's say, it's not locked down. You can, as I said, customize it and add libraries as you wish, as you require. As I said, provisioned on demand or serverless. So there are different languages as well. Excuse me. And this ties into the fact that we have different personas. So you'll have data engineers, you'll have data scientists, and your data scientists, even within that community, you may have some that are more Python centric, some are Scala centric, or you can even use ML.NET. So again, we're trying to cater to those different personas. And again, we're making it quite easy. So again, whether you're Python or Scala, it's just a toggle. It's just a drop down is all you change. You don't have to install libraries. You just change a particular, as I said, toggle in a drop down. And I'll come on to that in the demo. So again, that's quite a, and again, it's all wrapped within one user, let's say, one user experience, one user screen. You're not having to flip into different IDEs. You can use things like VS Code, etc. However, that's not mandatory. You can literally, operate within the one UI. So again, that's quite appealing to a lot of users, not having to jump around. And as I said, go into different notebook environments, or as I said, different IDEs. It's all within the one screen. So that's a very quick run through of Synapse. The one thing then I just wanted to cover off, because I'll just literally have a couple more minutes and slides, and then we'll maybe hop into the UI. So Azure Purview. So the same day we went GA with Synapse, we actually announced the name Azure Purview as public preview. Bit of a tongue twister, that one. So Purview is public preview. So by all means, you can provision it, spin it up, ingest data. So this is our, if you like, data governance offering. It was previously known as Azure Data Catalog Gen 2, and there was a previous incarnation, Gen 1. But it's a complete rewrite from Gen 1. So it's I think far more enterprise grade and enterprise ready compared to Gen 1. So just a couple of concepts here. Right now, the public preview is more concentrated on Azure sources, things like Data Lake, Synapse, Blob, etc., SQL, Cosmos. It does include SQL Server on-premise, so you can, as I said, connect to a SQL Server. What it's actually doing is it's basically you define all of these different sources and it scans them, or you can automate scans and you can define what you want to scan, which file formats you want to scan. You can define classification rules. We provide 100 classification rules out of the box, but you can customize as well. So basically what it does, it scans your data, it figures out, is there some PII data, is there some, it classifies, is this a first name, last name, email, a customer ID, etc. So as I said, there's quite a rich array, over 100 out of the box, so it does a pretty good first pass. But inevitably in your organization, you probably would do some customizations as well. So we are, as of today, it's more Azure focused and preview, but we are, for example, building out some on-premise capabilities, on-premise data sources, other clouds as well. So again, the aim is that it will be quite much broader than just Azure. It will include, as I said, on-prem, other clouds. It does actually have some integration with Azure Information Protection, which is in the Office 365 cloud, if you like. So there's a bit of a handoff there. You can define things like sensitivity labels in Office 365, and it can be, should you wish, you can opt in and pass it over to Purview, which again can apply and basically, based on the scans, determine if there is some sensitive data, in your estate. There's a few nice gimmies in here. There's also a business glossary, and there's also a data insights capability, which is a way of, if you like, doing aggregate views of your assets in terms of your file formats, in terms of your business glossary, the classifications, sensitivity. So it can be also, the data insights can help you doing, think of it as investigation analysis, because, for example, you may have a classifier that classifies PII data. And again, the insights will surface where you have that in your estate. And again, you may want to discover which assets have those sensitive labels or GDPR type labels. And this is Purview. There's, as I said, quite a rich array. Lineage is one we always get asked about. There's Lineage. So it plugs into certain services, transformation services like the Data Factory is the main one, but also Power BI. You can connect into those to, as I said, discover the lineage of your data. It does column level lineage as well. The API is based on Atlas. So again, it's a pretty universally used API. And again, it's sort of to encourage, let's say, better interoperability between other tools as well. And as I said, there is a huge backlog of, let's say, line items coming down the funnel. Amazon S3 is one of them. As I said, a lot of the connectors we already have, because basically we use the same infrastructure as we have with Data Factory. So we have a lot of these connectors. It uses integration runtime as well. So we have the IP, it's just a matter of sort of rolling that IP inside of Purview. But again, we expect to see a lot more of those data sources, the non-Microsoft type data sources coming online. You can always, by the way, push data in. So by default, you scan your data sources, your lakes, your blobs, etc. And the scan will, as I said, detect, classify, pull in metadata, but also, understand, for example, pull in for a table, it'll understand the columns, the data types, but also try to classify it and apply glossary terms as well. You can always use a push mechanism where you push data to the catalog via the APIs, via the SDKs, via the Atlas APIs. So again, that's another option, as I said. I guess that's probably an exceptional use. You probably, like I said, want to leverage the scans to automate that as much as possible. But again, you still have that option should you wish, because there are probably always going to be some, let's say, non-standard data sources that you might have to push via API. Okay, any questions while I switch into demo mode? I'm gonna stop sharing for a second and reshare.
I think we got one in the chat there, Graham, from Scott. Scott, I don't know if
you want to shout out while I'm sharing here.
Scott there. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, it's just finding mute. Yeah, it was just around Azure analysis services. Whether that's a likely candidate to go under the Synapse Studio.
Under Synapse Studio. Azure. So under Synapse, do you mean? I'm kind of going to jump ahead. Do you mean? From a model point of view, or do you mean from a visualization, or what do you mean?
So yeah, more from the modeling. So obviously you got visualizations in there, the data lakes, and the cubing part of it seemed a natural fit for me to go in there, but I didn't know if it was on any roadmap that you knew. I don't think it's there at the moment. But.
No. So what you get, I'm jumping ahead here, but I'll to answer. You get, so with Power BI. By the way, this is the Power BI. You can connect to the Power BI workspace. This is more the visualization experience as opposed to the data modeling type experience. I'm not, to be honest, I think the data modeling is probably more, Visual Studio Data Tools is kind of more that experience, to be honest, because within that experience you can deploy models to both analysis services and Power BI now. So I think the Visual Studio is more that particular use, that scenario for me is kind of, I'm not aware of them adding it inside of here because it probably sits in Visual Studio for now, as far as I know.
Yeah, no, cool. Okay, thank you.
Cool. So here we are. Let me just roll back a little. So by the way, here I am in this Synapse Analytics Studio here. And by the way, you get to this is, the classic blade here. You just get exposed. This is I'm in Synapse in the portal, the user portal, but I could just connect on Open Synapse Studio, which will take me to here. So this is think of it, the landing page, splash page. So there's basically 6 different icons on the left-hand side, which I'll cover. Just one to highlight here, which I think is really neat. There's a Learn icon there. So behind the Learn, there's a Knowledge Center, which gives you a whole bunch of, so I just go click in the gallery. So it actually gives you a whole bunch of, these are open data sources. You can connect to these within, again, you can actually walk through the scenario and within a couple of clicks, you can access the data. These are in blobs in public domain. So you literally are one click away from doing analysis and, like I said, building pipelines, etc. So again, it's similar if you've used Data Factory, you get a whole bunch of, like I said, artifacts that you can basically, or templates, if you will, so you can get up and running, that much faster. So again, that's really gives you a head start. And again, it's actually, to be honest, there's some really good, I think that's one of the beauties of the cloud is there's some really good data sources. It's similar actually if you use ML Studio of old or Azure ML now. Again, you can straight away, there's a gallery where you can just one click and you pull in a data set and you're good to go. You can do modeling, etc. So that's quite powerful. So the one thing I'll move on to here, and I'm on the left-hand side. I'm just going to walk through maybe 2 or 3 of these icons and conscious of time, but basically just to hit a few of the major points. So this is the Manage hub, it's called. We call these things on the left-hand side hubs. If I just go to SQL pools, so basically what you get, and just if you cast your mind back to that sort of PowerPoint slides, you basically have a collection of dedicated pools. You see the type of dedicated pools here. And again, I could actually pause these. There's a scaling. I can actually configure these, and there's basically scaling levels I could change these to. And basically, again, like I said, you can also, as I said, scale, pause. You can actually have multiple. You can see here, I've actually, this built-in is a default. It's always, this is the serverless one, if you like, that built-in one. But you could have multiple, and think of it as you could have multiple, if you like, of these, dedicated pools to serve different users. That's an option you have. If I just go down to the next one down, this is my Spark engine. So again, this is my Apache Spark engine, which I can, it actually, this particular one, it goes idle after 15 minutes, which means I'm probably idle now. So I'll probably take a bit of a penalty when I run it for the first time. But again, you have scaling factors here as well. Again, what we'd recommend is, you probably on day one don't want to have a big, huge cluster knocking around. And by the way, again, it scales down. It's not in use, but you probably want to have a bit of discipline when you're sort of maybe doing some experiments. But again, that's kind of configurable here. A couple of other notes. So we have, again, this is very similar to Data Factory. What you do is you define all basically your data sources, Power BI, Data Lake, Cosmos, I'll come on to in a minute. If you're to do that, by the way, and the sort of way to do it, if you've done Data Factory, it's the exact same. You basically choose, which particular data source you're trying to connect to. Again, there's a very rich array because it's pretty much similar to, it pretty much is Data Factory. There are the linked services, and again, it ties back to the statement. What you define here, this is the kind of the universe of your data access. So you can literally define all of your Azure storage accounts in your enterprise or whatever you've access to. And as I said, by the way, we always advise use RBAC, managed identities, service principles, best practices to enable that rather than doing it sort of point to point. Azure Purview as well is in here. So again, the idea, cast your mind back. You want to, there's multiple disciplines within Synapse. It's not just for a data engineer. Purview is really meant for, data stewards, data governance type users, personas, discovery as well. Again, and that's kind of connected here. So you do a bit of configuration to get that, as I said, integrated. We have integration runtimes, again, similar to Data Factory. Should you wish, for example, to pull data from on-premise, you'd need a self-hosted integration runtime. And last but not least, I have GitHub. So basically, all of the work I'm doing here is in my GitHub repository, which is that's the next. Yeah. Again, everything I'm going to come on to building some notebooks, but basically everything gets replicated to my GitHub, which was quite a big ask when we were in preview on Synapse. So the next thing I'm going to do, so basically think of this as the management plane, the plumbing. I'm defining my data sources. I'm defining the size of my compute, my clusters here, my dedicated SQL, my Spark, defining GitHub integration runtimes, which, from connecting to other on-premise or non-Azure sources. So again, this is kind of the management plane. So then getting into maybe the data sort of plane here, getting into the data sources. So what I got here, I've just navigated on the left-hand side to my data environment. So here you can see my databases. I'm in the workspace kind of area. And what I have here, these are all the databases I've access to. So one of them is this particular one. So this is my dedicated pool. This is the SQL DW as was. And again, what you get here, I'm just going to go on any table. Let me go on trip. What you get here is probably similar to what you experience in many of the tools. You right click and you get, some auto gen. And auto gen is quite important because that's quite appealing in this. Now, this is obviously a simple scenario. I've just done select top 100 from the table. And you can see, by the way, you can connect to different pools and use, in this case, a certain database. But just to let me just kill that there because it's not terribly informative. But what you could also do is, let me just go to that, do that again. Hopefully you can see there's an option here to do new notebook, load to data frame. So again, when I do that, what it's actually doing is hopefully in the right-hand side, you can see it's actually created autogen some Spark code for me. And basically, this is kind of good to run now. I could run this and it'll run against my Spark engine. And again, it'll return. What it's actually doing is building a data frame. But what you can then do is add lots of code to it, and again, build, be it, in this case, it's using Scala, but you could use PySpark if you want, Python. So again, that's quite a key capability, that it's able to auto-gen that code. And we'll come on to blobs and data lake, where it's a bit, if you do it manually, it's quite difficult, but here it's very simple. One thing as well I thought I'd mention here is we have external tables. So basically in the external table, I'll do select 100 rows. So what this is doing, let me just kill a few of these. So what it's doing, it's just, again, not a very exciting query on the surface. I've just done select top 100 from the table, but it's an external table. So actually, this data here is actually a bunch of JSON files in a folder on the data lake. It could actually be in folders and subfolders. It's just a bunch of files. It's actually multiple files on the folder. But again, because I've defined it as an external table, pointing, I'm basically giving it a pointer. It's basically abstracted all that sort of, I don't need to know that there's actually, this is sitting in a data lake. It looks to me like it's a table. So it makes it a lot easier. Think of Power BI users, Excel users, they now can potentially access all of your data. If it's blob or if it's in data lake, that looks like, here it looks like, tabular data. Even though, as I said, in this case, it's a bunch of JSON set on a data lake. You do have some charting capabilities in here as well, but again, it's not akin to Power BI, which I'll come on to. One other thing I would show you in here, again, within the database, we have a Spark database. So again, this obviously ties back to the fact you have a Spark engine. And in the Spark engine, you basically can define tables, even though they're kind of, in this case, they're backed by a data frame. So what you can also do here is, so I could, by the way, I could run a SQL script or create a notebook in Spark. But what you can also do is do machine learning. So here I have a table. I'm basically going to, let me walk you through, there's two options here. Well, let me walk you through enrich with a new model. So what I can do is I can select that option. I can actually connect to I have a machine learning workspace in Azure. Think of the machine learning workspace, think of it as a repository for all of my experiments and models and notebooks. And in this case, what it's going to do is going to capture all of the information about the experiment, what model I'm going to run. It's not actually doing the compute because I'm doing this in this environment. But again, it just means that I can do lots of, let's say, experiments, in this case, build a model across different maybe Synapse environments, different environments, but I can point all of the outputs, all of the metadata, if you like, to one workspace. One is Azure Machine Learning Workspace, which just means you're avoiding sprawl. It's kind of centralized. So what I would do here is I would select a fair amount. So basically I'm predicting how much taxi rides cost in New York City. And again, I could submit this and basically it'll run in the Spark engine, but it's going to output all of my results to, if you like, my workspace. This is actually using something, let me continue here. This is using AutoML, by the way. So what I would do is I would select regression because it's a regression scenario. I can give it some, if you like, supervision data, how long I want it to take, which metric I want it to basically perform by. And actually, I could open this in a notebook. So again, if I do that, it'll generate the code for me. So you can see it's generated all this code, which is actually quite, I would say, non-trivial to create manually because it's adding in, you see there subscription IDs. This sort of stuff drives you crazy when you're doing it manually. So it just helps you. I'm not saying you have to do it. I mean, this is kind of like a wizard way of doing things, but it can often be a great way to get yourself started. So it just means it's figuring out all of the, let's say, the metadata type, subscription data, etc. And again, that's quite, as you can probably tell, can be painful to do it manually. So let it do it for you the first time, and then you can build on top of that. Also, probably one path I could have gone through, enrich with existing model. I could have gone through we have some out-of-the-box capabilities. So you could do text analytics, sentiment analysis. So for example, if you got some survey data, you could feed that into, let's say there's a free-form text column in your data. By the way, it could be a flat file as well. And you could point it to text analytics and it can do a sentiment analysis. We also have things like anomaly detection. So again, it could be, your time series data or something and you want to detect spikes, troughs, trends, etc. Again, that's what the anomaly detection can do. So again, it's as I said, we're trying to service, there's different users here. Some would be, SQL users, but equally there's kind of data scientists who may want to, use that capability to do testing. So that's the kind of the databases. But what's also of great interest is, and let me actually, I'm just going to kill a few of these because we can get too many. All right, so let's go into the link services. So think of the link services here. This is where, at a minimum, you will have the data lake, your primary data lake, which is basically underpins the Synapse. It contains basically what you see here. This is the workspace. It contains the metadata there. But you can have dozens of any number of different storage accounts, data lakes, and Blob and Cosmos as well. I'll talk about. So Cosmos briefly is very interesting because what I can do here is I've actually linked my Cosmos engine. Now my Cosmos engine here is actually a transactional environment. And what I can do is, all right, there's a key that needs to go in here, but I'll basically what you can do is you can do analysis against that Cosmos database, which actually is linked to is a transactional environment. And behind the scenes, Cosmos basically can build a analytical engine beside the transactional environment, which means that in Synapse, I'm connecting to that analytical environment. It's actually a column store. So what I can do is near real time, I can analyze transactional data without any impact to that transactional system. Because what I'm actually doing, I'm not connecting to the actual system of record, the transactional data. I'm connecting to the column store, which is basically replicating data from the row store. So it's quite a clever little chain. But the reason for that chain is that we don't want to disrupt any transactional, business critical workloads. So that's where Cosmos comes in. And the reason I mention that is, you think of the strategy here that, on this panel, I can have all of my data sources, my data lakes, my blobs, including transactional environments where I can get near real-time basic analytics of my, as I said, system of records. So that's quite powerful. And something else here, I'm going to actually just drill into the data lake. So let me go into my primary data lake. And as you can see, it's displayed in a folder structure. I'm going to just go into a folder here, demo. So I'm still in the sort of the data environment in my Synapse Analytics Studio. And I have what I'm looking at here. These are files of my data lake. So what I can do is just say I'm a SQL type person. I'm a business analyst, but I'm kind of getting intimidated here because I have all these JSON, CSV, and this Parquet thing. I don't know what it is. So all I need to do is I just need to right click and again select top 100 rows, even though this is a JSON file, and that will automatically generate that generates that let's say that code, and again, just by clicking execute, it basically has executed it for me. So basically, regardless of if it's any of the standard data like formats, as I said, I can just right click and get access to that straight away. And again, obviously I can build on top of that. I can also, by the way, I could have, if I wanted, load it to a data frame. So I could have built a notebook. And again, it's auto-generating. I'll actually run this, but I know it's probably going to take a few seconds because it's the first iteration. But again, you can see it can be quite cumbersome to write all this out, but again, it does it for you. So that's quite powerful regardless of the file format. It's abstracting that sort of manual, those manual steps to create, to build those notebooks or to build a SQL. So this is Parquet file, and same thing again, even though it's Parquet, I could actually select, again, it generates the SQL for me, which is quite useful. What I could also do, one option I could do, I could actually do a bulk load. I could create an external table. The bulk load, what that does, it builds, I kind of think of it as a wizard. So again, if you want to bulk load that file in, so it's persisted inside a dedicated pool, you can do that. Or as I said, I could have just created a notebook and built a data frame and then done further machine learning analysis. Or in fact, I could have selected multiple of those Parquet files, and again, same thing, load the multiple. And again, you can see here, this can get quite, as I said, this is only 4 files, but you may have hundreds. And by the way, it's kind of a wildcard aware. So if you have a folder structure, again, it understands the construct. So again, you can do filtering is what I'm saying, or you can down select or up select certain files or certain folders. And again, that would be very, very difficult to do manually, whereas this is quite easy. So that's a few, let's say, and I think it's quite powerful that is there for you, and it just gives you a huge head start. You're not having to, as I said, you're not having to manually try to work all this out. Any questions with that? Okay, so just a couple other things. Again, there's loads of different things I could have shown you there, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to move on to the Develop tab on the left-hand side. So basically, this is where you keep, you can keep all your scripts, SQL scripts, your notebooks, and Power BI. I did show you this earlier. But again, what you can do here is you can, in the Manage tab, you connect to your Power BI workspace. And again, think of this as a symbolic link. You're not duplicating work. This is basically, these artifacts are in my workspace. So I'm kind of literally, using the assets in my workspace here. So again, it just means, and by the way, what I should add, what you're seeing here, this is a, this isn't a static view. This is a real, this is what you'd see in your, Power BI workspace. Again, because what I can do here is basically, use a slicer and basically get the visual updates based on them. Let me actually make it a bit more real estate here. Yeah, you can see there's a bit of a, I don't know why there's a taxi in the middle of the Atlantic, the Azores or something, but again, you can see that is, if I select, all right, there's a certain outlier in the data set, but again, that just shows you it is a real live data set, and you can slice and dice accordingly. I'm just using a slicer here based on data week. And again, these are pretty big numbers here. If I actually expand out my slider, I think we're getting into, I'm working with a pretty big data set, but again, I'm getting, let me go up to the universe of data, pretty good response times even, at that scale. But yeah, that again, that's quite powerful that, you can think of, again, think of the life cycle from data ingestion through to, like I said, viewing it in Power BI. With the data ingestion, I won't really have time to cover it, but we have on the left-hand side, I'm at the Integrate hub. So what you have here is, this is basically Data Factory. So if you know Data Factory, all of the operations, all of the sources, syncs, pipelines, that all applies here. Where you can build your pipelines, this is just a very simple pipeline, a copy data pipeline. I'll run it. It's just copying data from one service to another, pretty straightforward. Again, the reason I put that in here, so I can just go to the Monitor tab, and I can just do a refresh. And again, this monitor tab is really, again, keeping track of all the if you like, runs of my pipelines, because I'm in production, or I guess in most enterprises, you'd always have some pipeline running at some point. And again, this is let me actually show you one that's failed. It's probably more interesting. So basically, deliberately, I have some that have failed here, folks. Actually, let me drill into one. It's actually more interesting, this one that's failed. But basically, you get pretty good telemetry, and I can drill into this. And this is the output. And again, that's actually, it's actually more interesting if you do a data flow. It gives you a Gantt chart of exactly what operation takes place, what time slice. And here there's a particular error I need to do some PD on. But again, at least it's surfacing out quite readily the problem I had in my pipeline. And some of those succeeded as well. And again, the one that succeeded, I can drill into, and it gives me this, if you like, summary information. It gives you things like number of records copied, data read, etc., time lags. So that's the monitor. And as I said, again, Data Factory in itself is a quite a wide area, but it's all, as you can see, within the one screen. Within the one experience, you can do, as I said, from the left-hand side, ingestion, right through to the transformation, right through to, in the case of the notebooks, the scripts, you can do, insight analysis, you can build pipelines, you can build models, machine learning models, auto ML, build your own ML as well. So that is a quick run through of Synapse Analytics Studio. Very briefly, because I'm 10 past the hour, and if nothing else, want to hit the quarter past on the nose very quickly. So this is Christos. So this is Purview, and again, I'll just give a very quick run through here. So this is my catalog. This is basically this is a demo catalog. And what I have in here, I'm just going to do a search. By the way, there's an intelligence search in here, which I'm just going to, as you can see, I can as you'd kind of expect as recently accessed searches, but I'm just going to do a star. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just doing a search. This basically has thousands of assets of my, let's say, enterprise assets. As you can see on the left, we have a facetable search, different asset types. Or if I scroll down, classification. So basically, classifications are an enrichment. And think of, you know, your asset types you have, your data lakes, your databases, Power BI, etc. The classification is what gets applied. You have a scan. The scan has all of these classifiers, like I said, like credit card number, world cities, etc. But think of that as an enrichment. It's enriched with that information. And again, you can enrich it with contacts, labels, glossary terms as well. So all of this is an enrichment, which, as I said, makes your data easier to search. So for example, I know there's a particular data asset I'm interested with this particular, this customer field. So let me just drill in here. And again, this is a particular table. You can see in the hierarchy on the right-hand side, hopefully. It's a table with a SQL database. That's the server. That's the schema. That's the customer. That's the customer's actual table. In the schema here, you can see it's found some classifications, some of them easier, some of them less easy. It's figured out. You can have, as I said, a custom classifier. It's got a glossary term as well. And I could, by the way, I could edit all this. So I could edit. Obviously, you want the scanning to do you want this done automatically, but there may be times you want to override things or add in your own glossary terms. So you can do it. And by the way, once you do it, the scans won't override it. It's sort of has higher priority. Let me actually go back to the home and actually let me do a search on. Let me do a search on that again. So if I go to customer, okay. So lineage is always of interest. So again, this is the same table. This is SQL table, but you can see this is if I change this table or I wanted to understand what's downstream or what's upstream, in this case downstream, I can see all the operations here. So it's picking up an Azure Data Factory copy activity. I could switch to the asset, by the way. Let's actually click on one of the columns because it does column lineage. So if there's a certain column I'm interested in, you can see it's sort of picked up there through the flow. So again, that gives you an idea if you're trying to, if you like, identify, the impact or basically what's upstream, downstream of assets. You can have contacts to all of these assets as well. One thing I'll also maybe show you if I go back to the home page. Let me do a search on this one. So here I'm actually doing a search on a JSON file and a blob. And hopefully you can see there's this partition count. So this is quite clever. What it's actually able to do is detect that even though this is a JSON file, it's one of many JSON files that roll up to an entity, a higher level entity like a customer. Now, the reason this is important is because when you have blobs and data lakes, you could have a customer table which spans hundreds of files across lots of folders. But you know what? It's only one entity. It's like a customer. So you don't want to pollute your data catalog with thousands of entries that just relate to one thing, like like I said, a customer table. So that helps you particularly with data lakes because it understands folder structure. It understands, year, month, GUIDs, things like that may crop up in folder structures. So that's quite clever. It's able to detect that. Again, just conscious of time. I think I'll show you the insights. It's quite cool because, again, think of having thousands of assets because most environments will have many assets. So what this is doing, it's giving you some summary information of your assets. In this case, here's my glossary terms, classifications. So for example, I think I mentioned, just say, for example, let's using classification as an example. I'm going to do a bit of investigation work here. I'm going to drill into this particular chart. And so, for example, I know I have a classification called PII. So there you go, contains PII data. It's basically, this has been picked up. This has been done automatically by the scan, I should say. I can now browse a particular asset. And there I found this particular table. And if I go to the schema, there I can see this particular asset has been sensitive. And again, I could do some investigation. So that potentially could save me days, weeks of effort. But because of the scanning and the classifying, it's detected that straight up. And you can do things like file extensions, quite interesting to see if there's any file formats that should or shouldn't exist in your organization. Again, there's too many things to cover there, but I just wanted to hit home that is there's things like the business glossary, and there's a whole basically There's a whole, again, similar to what you saw in Synapse, there's a whole set of screens where you set all of the data sources up, where you define the scans, you run the scans, you can define the classifiers. These are the classification rules. There's over 100 given to you. This is built upon, think of our Office and our Dynamics, kind of what we know about industry models, etc. So again, a lot of this is out of the box, but you can define, for example, this particular one is interesting. It's a particular classification rule detecting IBAN numbers, banking numbers. So again and again, there's various, think of it as kind of fuzzy logic to detect those numbers. There's a bit of forgiveness is what you can set out here, be pessimistic or optimistic. So yeah, that's, again, as I said, it's an entire career in itself, but I just wanted to give you a bit of a flavor of both UIs. That's Purview, and previously that was Synapse. Also, so that is 15 minutes to the minute past the hour. And as I said, if nothing else, I do try to be punctual. So hopefully that's given you a flavor. Please shout, holler, any questions, emails, etc. Please, happy to answer them when required.
Graham, that was fantastic. I think, yeah, we only had a couple of questions. I think you covered off. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much, Graham, for your time. That was fantastic. If anybody does have any questions, obviously, just to reiterate, we've recorded the session. It'll be up on the site probably tomorrow. So if you need to rewatch it back, obviously reach out to the team. We can feed comments back to Graham if you can't find his contact information. More than happy to do that. So on that note, thanks very much, Graham. If everybody wants to come off mute and give Graham a round of applause, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thanks, Graham. Okay, right. On that note, it's quiz time. So I presume you all have your Kahoot app installed on your mobile phone, and we are going to hand it over to George. George, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
So yeah, if you've not for newcomers, if you've not played this before, go onto Google the word Kahoot, which, let me put the link in the chat, is probably easiest, isn't it? Whilst
yeah, I can also share my screen if that's okay.
Yeah. So there's a link in the chat for anybody that hasn't got it. Yeah, share your screen. So I think what we're going to do, George, is we've got a £50 Amazon voucher for our first place prize, and second and third place runners up, we've got some Microsoft exam vouchers. And then if you stick around to the end, get the link for our feedback form, we will we'll pick a person at random. So it's worth filling in that feedback form, because everybody tends to forget to do that. But you can be a winner of another £50 Amazon voucher if you do that. So over to you, George.
Hello, everyone, and thank you. You cannot hear me, isn't it, John?
Yeah, do you want to stick your video on, George, so people can see your smiley face?
Yeah, in a minute. Bear with me. There you go. Got so many screens open. Can you see me now?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. All right. Welcome to the Welsh Azure user group virtual meetup quiz. As mentioned earlier, we will be having prizes for the winners, and you'll walk away with almost £50 vouchers, Amazon vouchers. The quiz is, as you can see, in Kahoot. If you're ready, everyone, you could put the pin for your phone. For those of us who are coming in through the mobile. Yeah, so for the ones using the mobile, they will not be seeing the questions, I believe. So I'll give you how to go with the answers. I believe that A for the answer will be red, B will be yellow, C will be blue, and D will be green. Now, forgive me for the B for yellow, because it might be orange. I may be colorblind. Are we all good to start?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's go.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, question 1. Do you want to win the Amazon voucher prize? A for no thanks, and yellow for I want pizza, blue for I'm not an Amazon fan, thanks, and green, yes, give it to me. Wow, there's some yellows. Okay. Yeah, we got leaders there. That's easy. Now for the easier questions. Number 2, which service in Azure is used to manage resources in Azure? We got green for application insights, yellow for Azure portal, blue for Azure resource manager, and green for log analytics. Lovely. Good answers, everyone. Right, JC is still leading. Question 3, what does IaaS stand for? Red, infrastructure as a system, yellow, infrastructure as a service, blue, infrastructure as a storage, and green, infrastructure as a server. That was easy. JC still leading. Dean have picked up to number 2. Well done, guys. Question 4. This has got double points in it. Which of the following would log you into Azure Resource Manager via PowerShell? We got red for login Azure account, yellow for new Azure session, blue for login Azure RM account, sorry, and green for login Azure. It will be blue, login Azure RM account. Next. There you go. Got Darren leading now. Which service provides serverless computing in Azure accounts? In Azure, that is. Green is Azure Container Instances. Blue is Azure Storage Accounts. Red is Azure Virtual Machines, and yellow is Azure Functions. Got good answers there. Next. Darren leading. Right, question 6. Which of these is not a use case of Microsoft Azure Stack? We got red, run edge computing workloads, yellow, provide next-gen Hyper-V platform, blue, modernize your data center, and green, run your own private autonomous cloud. Okay, the answers are there. That's the one. If I could mention just a little bit here is based on how I think this answer would be is just a second, everyone. Yeah, I'm just having a few notes on this. Yes, it will be with run edge computing workloads, modernize your data center, and run your own private autonomous. Those are mainly the only things that you can do with Azure Stack. One is edge, then hyperconvergence, and then hub. I think this has already been mentioned before. Let's see. Who else is reading now? And question 7. When was Azure Purview launched to public preview? Red is 13 December 2019. Yellow is 4th January this year. Blue is 3rd December 2020, and not yet. It was last year, December the 3rd. Ross is still leading, and Darren's now number 2. Question 8, double point question. To apply sensitivity labels defined in Microsoft 365 Compliance Center, what does Azure Purview integrate with? Red is Azure Synapse Analytics. Yellow is Power BI. Blue is Data Loss Protection. And green is Microsoft Information Protection. And the answer is MIP. I think it uses that to enable sensitivity labels and basically drill down into asset data, sensitivity data across all the estates. Let's see. We've got number 2 now, Purview. Ross is still holding. Question 9, what type of service is Azure Synapse Analytics? Red is PAS, yellow is IAS, blue is SAS, and green is none of these. It's PAS, red. These are changes to number 2 and 3. Well done, Ross, holding the button. Number 10, what are the 3 key areas of data that Synapse brings together? This is a bit wordy. Red is data integration, enterprise data warehousing, and big data analytics. Blue is APIs, big data, and data factory. Yellow is data integration, APIs, and real life data. And green is data analytics, AI. We got answers already. Good. In fact, the red one is the definition of Synapse. Okay. Number 2 and number 3, these are raised there. Well done, Ross, for keeping it up. Question 11, what type of data can you query in Azure Synapse Analytics? Red is all types of data. Blue is both relational and non-relational data. Yellow is non-relational data, and green is only relational data. Lovely, that's the answer, both relational and non-relational data. Again, the race is for number 2, really. This is very good. Question 12, what does RBAC stand for? Red is role-based access control. Yellow is review-based admin control. Blue is role backup access control. Everyone knows that. It's access management. It has to be control. I got number 2 changes. Question 13, can I use a managed identity to access a resource in a different directory or tenant? Red, no managed, no. Yellow, yes, only on Wednesday. Blue sometimes, and green, yes. Yes, the answer is we haven't been able, Azure hasn't been able to do that in different directory and tenants yet. Okay, it's getting exciting. Go question 14. How far does Microsoft fiber optics network stretch? Around the world twice, that's red, yellow to the moon and back, blue to the moon and back twice, and green to the moon and back 3 times. It's quite far. And it's to the moon and back 3 times. Okay. Looks like position number 1 and 2 has been held for long. Which of these food does not expire? Cooking oil, that's red. Blue, beer. yellow bread, and green honey? This is a very tough Azure question. Here we go there. Yes, honey is only food that does not expire. There you go. And everyone, we finish our quiz and we go Purview as number 3 and we go the Purview as number 2. And the winner is Ross. Congratulations, Ross. And the runners up is Dean and Brock. This is lovely.
Awesome. Cheers, George. Thanks for that. And well done to the first, second, third. Do you all want to put your emails in the chat for me, just to make my life a little bit easier? So Ross, congratulations. You got a £50 Amazon voucher. The Pew, you have a Microsoft exam voucher, and Purview, same to you, Microsoft exam voucher. Stay tuned. We're just gonna, if you can just drop your emails into the chat, that would be perfect. Just got a quick slide to finish up now. So yeah, thanks so much to everybody for joining us tonight. Obviously, it's been a great session. Hope you'll agree. Big shout out to Christos and obviously Graham for that. Don't forget, our next user group meetup is on the 18th of February. Like I say, we're starting a little bit earlier, 6 o'clock. We've got the amazing John Saville. So if you've not seen John before, I really recommend that you look up his YouTube channel. He's got some awesome content. Go and look him up. And I think Scott Hanselman, surely he's the man that needs no introduction. So if you don't know who Scott is, then go and look Scott up as well. But it's just going to be a phenomenal event next month. So keep on point for that. And then finally, that's it. Feedback. We're going to give another £50 Amazon voucher away. If you just scan that QR code or go to the feedback form, leave your details and leave us some feedback. What was good, what was bad, any suggestions, opinions, ideas that you got for the group, feed them back through us that way. And like I say, we make sure you leave your email, of course, and we will obviously get you, well, we'll pick a winner at random for another £50 voucher. So on that note, thank you once again for all for coming, and we really hope to see you at the next event.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everyone.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you, John.
Thank you all.
Thanks all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.
John. Bye, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.